Hey, what's going on, good people? It's Gardner Douglas, your Oyster Ninja. I'm here with Mr. Alex Lambert with Lambert Shellfish. What's up, buddy?
Not much. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure, man. So Alex, you are a oyster farmer, a entrepreneur, as they call. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, man, and why in the world you wanted to be an oyster farmer.
Yeah, so I actually came from New York City. I was working at one of the accounting firms. My family got this awesome piece of property on the Eastern Shore of Virginia in 2013, and it was kind of like our vacation spot for a couple of years. But during that time, you could just kind of look out the windows, and we're on Hungers Creek, and there's a bunch of different like aquaculture operations, and I just started watching them and became interested, started watching YouTube videos and reading about it. And yeah, I started out with a couple thousand seed and some cages. It was kind of a hobby for a couple of years, and then I just kind of fell in love with it so much that I decided to quit my accounting job, move down here full time, and start the business in the beginning of 2019. So for the past couple of years, we've been growing this relatively new oyster business, and yeah, trying to continue to get better.
No doubt, man. Um, so I'm gonna hop right in, kind of, I guess. So when you say start with 1,000 seed, a lot of people are like, whoa, 1,000. So
Yeah.
compared to then to now, like, what's your re-up look like, so to say? Like,
So yeah, over the past 3 years, we've gone up, and then last year we came back down a little bit. But on average, we're doing about 1 million seed. Um,
sheesh,
yeah,
that's crazy to even
yeah.
think about 1 million oysters out in the bay. Where are you located again?
So we're at the mouth of Hungers Creek. The town is Mashapongo on the eastern shore of Virginia. So we're on the bay side, but pretty far down.
Nice. Um, for the folks who are not familiar with Machapongo
Yeah,
and the Eastern Shore, just how would you describe the Eastern Shore, man? Of course, that's where I grew up.
yeah. So it's kind of another term is the Delmarva Peninsula. So if folks are somewhat familiar at looking at the Chesapeake Bay, it's kind of the long peninsula on the east side of the bay that kind of runs north south. And so Mashapongo is pretty much all the way at the south end. We're 10 miles north of Cape Charles. So Cape Charles is pretty much right before you get to the long bridge, which spans the from the eastern shore to Virginia Beach. So we're kind of all the way on the south side of the Delmarva Peninsula.
Nice, man. Um, how do you like that slow life down there?
I love it. Yeah, I tell everyone leaving New York, which I also loved. I was a little concerned about my sanity, but moving down here and not knowing anyone. But actually, it turned out that I met my now wife about 3 months in, just using a dating app, and so she had a bunch of friends in the Virginia Beach area. So it's just been, I think I lucked out that I kind of got welcomed into, a regular community of some really great folks down here. So I didn't lose my mind.
Let's talk. Let's totally switch up now because you're talking my love language now. I'm just joking, but no, like it's 2023 now. For the folks who don't know, I actually, all right, so I first saw my wife when I was working at the wharf in DC. She didn't give me a time. She didn't give me a chance. She didn't give me a number. Now, while I was deployed in Afghanistan, we don't have nothing else to do. So what am I doing? I'm on dating apps. I'm out there looking.
What was your radius from Afghanistan? No, it's just the whole world. Anyone that's
No, no,
or
no.
just back home, back home.
No, so I would like look up locations, like I looked up the Eastern Shore. But no, I looked up DC and I saw her and I was like, oh shoot, this is like probably meant to be. Now I was on Plenty of Fish, and it's crazy how it happened because I just sent her a message, and of course, I'm not gonna lie, I was talking to a lot of females on there. I'm not gonna lie, but it's crazy. Once I started talking to her, it was a wrap. It's like
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think, but like we were like just talking nonstop all the time. Let's get off the love train. Um, okay, so oh, I know what I wanted to talk about. The story I always tell people, just recently, like yesterday, I was telling it some people. I was like, yeah, I had this guy reach out to me, and now he has an oyster farm. So, just talk about let's talk about why you were listening to the podcast.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think when you started your podcast, it was probably around the same time when I was getting into all of the oyster stuff. Was it around was it 2014 or a little bit later?
Yeah, so I think I started the podcast around 2015, 2016.
Okay, okay, yeah,
Yeah, 2015 actually. Yeah, I think so.
yeah. And I think maybe I had read one of the great books, the history on the half shell, talking about like the New York City and the oyster there. I think that was maybe where I got introduced to Thomas Downing, or maybe it was a Chesapeake book. And I think I may have just searched oyster or something, and your podcast came up, and I think you would just put out that episode on him, or maybe it was like soon after that or something like that. And I was like, wow, like what are the chances? Like those early years, I kept being like, are there any books about oysters? I was just like obsessed to learn, and then every time I kind of found something, I would get so excited. So you were like the first like podcast guy. And I
No,
was like, wow, this is like everything seems to be related. The people, the stories, the history. That was kind of just a fun part.
yeah. So I appreciated it when you reached out to me because them early days, man, those were like struggling days, man. I was like, is this working? Are people really listening?
Yeah.
Like, does this even matter? Only oyster nerd,
Yeah.
it was like all of
Yes.
those things, like it was oh my god, it was tough. It was tough. So I appreciated like getting emails from people saying, hey, we love your podcast. Hey, I listened to your podcast. Hey, can you bring this guest on? So every now and then I get an email, but in the beginning, man, it was a lot. That stuff was fuel,
Yeah,
like
for
for
sure.
real,
Yeah.
to keep it going. Um, so what gets you through the tough times, man? You're an oyster farmer. Nothing about this is easy, especially building it from ground up.
Yeah.
What gets you through?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a tough time right now. We were working, so hard, so concentrated on Rowan's birth, and the last couple of weeks of December got really cold, and we were just like, selling a bunch, and I kind of lost track of kind of where we were, and yeah, we wound up selling out of our market size oysters in mid-January, which I thought at least this year, I thought we would have made to mid to late February. So yeah, we've kind of I've had to put my paternity, leave on pause and just make sure that I've been at the farm every single day, because every day, it's relatively easy when everything's going full throttle and you're just selling thousands of oysters a week. And we're super grateful. We've got some great customers, but when sales pause, at least you have to kind of be on a day-to-day focus of like, what are the tides giving us? What's the weather giving us? What can we do with the men that, with the people that we have? So it's kind of a lot more on a day by day, like this is the game plan, as opposed to when you're just getting an order that morning at 5 o'clock being like, we need 2,000 of these, 1,000 of these. And you could just, tell people to go off and do that. Right now, it's been a bit challenging, having to pause sales and kind of just focus on a million different things to get our farm in a better position going forward. So I think what gets me through times like these, is my wife, Allison, our friends, and even just kind of what you were just talking about as far as like people, reaching out to you like with support. It's kind of why I like posting on Instagram, just like sharing sort of, you know a vulnerable story and then getting support that way, or just kind of, posting a video or a picture of what's going on at the farm and then people just kind of interacting with that. It's kind of like you have an audience and people are like rooting for you to kind of keep going. So I think just, yeah, having people to support you along the way helps.
That's amazing, man. It's good to have that support group and just people knowing that like they're supporting what you do. You know what I mean? Like your work is not in vain. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Ideally, where would you like to see your oyster farm?
I mean, I think we're moving in the direction. So right now, over the past couple of weeks, we've added 8 more of our adjustable long lines. And then we've got space and a permit to put 4 more after that. So a nice adjustable long line farm there. We're getting into clams. I'm getting more into like living shoreline stuff. I don't know if you ever came across Clammerhead and Dr. Niels Lindquist. They came up with this oyster catcher material. It catches oysters and you could build oyster reefs. So living shorelines is kind of an area that I'm getting more and more excited and interested about. And yeah, just kind of having like just a really solid farm that produces great oysters. We're lucky, we've got a great employee, Simon, so just kind of keeping that relationship good. And just kind of, I think the more time that has passed over the past 3 or 4 years, the more I've kind of realized the lesson that things just take time. And so it's just to kind of be persistent and keep kind of building out and making hopefully the best decision one step at a time, sort of thing. So I can't entirely foresee or even dream, but just kind of keep trying to make like the right decision. But yeah, there's loads of things that I'm interested in. I would love to just get some grounds on the seaside. I think that's a dream, a long-term dream. Right now we've got a great spot on the bay side, but the seaside is a different world here on the Eastern Shore. So I think that's maybe something in the long future from now. But
Why is because I don't know. Why is the seaside a whole nother beast?
I mean, just kind of what's happening over there from the ocean. I think it's got like potential to get hit from serious storms over there. There's a little bit less protection. But yeah, I really don't have that much experience over there, besides like a few times going out with the Nature Conservancy. But it's just so beautiful over there. It's like man, I would love to have a couple acres over here just doing something, spending time, because that's honestly it's so much of why I love doing what we do every day, being out on the farm. It's just a couple of hours of just hard work and peace, and it's a good spot to be in. So yeah, if we could have a little playground on the seaside, that'd be fun too.
Cool. You spoke a little bit about the living shoreline. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so Dr. Niels Lindquist and the late Clammerhead came up with this idea of taking jute mesh, soaking it in cement, and then you could form different products out of it. And it turns out if you put these products out in the water at the right time of year, while the wild oysters are spawning, the little oysters will attach to these products, and you have yourself like the foundation of an oyster reef. So that's kind of the first step to living shorelines. And I'm actually right now in the process of learning more about Spartina alterniflora, which is kind of marsh grass. And that plays a huge environmental kind of role in living shorelines. So I'm getting more and more interested in the idea of being able to offer those products to local waterfront property owners as well for their living shorelines. But it's all super early days. I keep thinking about like that, where we're just talking about like the early days of this oyster dream, in that like 2014 2015, where it's just like I'm just searching the internet, like trying to read about it and learn about it. So that's kind of where I am right now with the living shoreline stuff, just kind of letting it percolate and kind of dance with the dream a little bit. But it is a cool idea.
Well, if you got any guests that I can interview to help you along in the process, let me know
Yeah, yeah.
because I would love to learn about that myself. What is the biggest difference between I don't is it still called farming clams? Like,
Yeah, I think so. So I think that one of the biggest differences is uh, you kind of like just broadcast the clam seed. And I'm new to this. There are families and folks on the Eastern Shore that have been doing it for over 100 years, and they really know it. So I'm brand new to this, but you essentially you broadcast the seed out into kind of like a fixed perimeter, like a 15 by 50-foot perimeter or so, and then you kind of just put this like mesh net on top of it, and they kind of just grow just an inch or two in the sand, and they kind of stick their siphon up to get the food that they need. um, and then yeah, it takes about a year and a half to 2 years, maybe slightly longer than our oysters here. um, but we haven't even harvested. We're probably going to harvest in the next 4 to 8 weeks. So we've got our clam rake, and we're all excited about that. But yeah, so I'm a novice there too. So exciting times, starting some new paths.
nice, nice. And you gave your employee a shout out. We
Yeah,
said Simon, right?
yeah, he's great.
Shout out to Simon.
Big shout out.
Um, let's talk about it, man, because I feel like ever since the pandemic, it's been really hard for everybody as far as staffing and even kind of knowing like what direction to go into. And I'm not sure the climate on the shore, but up here in DC, like people really just don't want to come back in the workplace.
Yeah,
So can you talk a little bit about the issues with staffing, or
yeah.
have you had any?
Yeah, no, we have, and this is something I'm really passionate about. So gonna try not to get like too emotional, but it is important because a lot of people, like, you hear a lot of people say like, oh, you just can't find good work. It's like maybe there's a bit more nuance and complexity to it. What I found, at least with Simon, is like people want to get paid fairly. They want to work. They want to do good work. They want to have a good environment. They don't want to answer to 4 or 5 bosses necessarily. Um, and yeah, I think if more employers could offer a higher salary with reasonable work hours and demands, I think everything would be better off. And it's not easy, but from my own experience, the alternative is just not worth it. The premium that you may offer in terms of like a salary, I think you get back more than that by consistency, good relationship, all the other stuff that comes with just not having the right people in place. It's hard to put a dollar you know value to that, but from my point of view, a couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I kind of realized like this whole thing won't get off the ground, or at least where I envision it to go, without really good people here. So yeah, we try and pay well, work hard, but not excessive, and yeah, try and offer like a good environment to be involved with.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. I mean, treat people the way you want to be treated is my
Exactly. Yeah.
my philosophy.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that. What do you think goes into choosing a good employee? Like what qualities, traits, what do you think for the other people, in situations like you are?
So I mean, God, let me just think of his characteristics. Being consistent, showing up on time, but it's so much more than that. It's like bringing the right attitude. Like, you don't need to be like smiling and laughing every single day, but like to show up and be like ready to work and kind of be flexible, with oyster farming and everything, there's, a lot of things that change as far as start times and the weather and the tides that, you're dealing with. But yeah, if you could just kind of roll with the punches, I think that's a good attribute to have in terms of being an oyster farmer, but probably other occupations as well.
Perfect. Shout out to Simon. Thank you for doing the right thing when nobody's looking. So why are you so passionate about the environment? Passionate about, what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think basically all oyster farmers are, like anyone that's out on the water. I think I can only speak from like my experience, but you feel so lucky to be out there and to consider that work and to be making a living out there. You just start to to care and to, if you can, make it better in any way that seems like a good idea. Just because you feel like you get so much out of it. So yeah, I kind of tell everyone, just growing up on Long Island, it just like nature wasn't like an immediate thing, right there, and going out into national parks was never a part of like my childhood. But over the past couple of years, I have kind of seen the benefits of being out in nature. It's way better than the alternative of not.
A lot of the oyster farmers I speak to and talk to on the show, everybody's like really passionate and they just want to spread the message. And thank you for doing your part also. I've done a bunch of videos with your oysters on YouTube and
Yeah.
some on Instagram too. Of course, we did DC on the Half Show together. Can you just talk about the oysters that you sell to the market and flavor profile and what makes your oysters different from the next?
So yeah, I think it's the long lines and the location that are probably the biggest contributors to what make our oysters different, special. So we've got two lines. We call our smaller oysters our loving cups. They're generally the prettier stuff. That's kind of what we've had at the two DC on the half shell events. But then we also have a larger oyster. We call it Rocky Tops, and they sell probably more in our wholesale because we offer them a little bit cheaper. But yeah, so we're at the mouth of Hungers Creek. We've got a medium salinity, kind of 20, sometimes it goes up to 25 parts per thousand. So pretty high for the Chesapeake Bay. And that's why at these, there's DC on the half shell events, a lot of people come up to us and, kind of say, oh, like these are seaside, right? It's like, no, they're just lower east Chesapeake Bay, and we get a decent amount of salt. So that's something that differentiates our oysters from a lot of oysters in the bay. And then, yeah, just kind of how we go about at our farm. Every farm is different, and kind of how the farmer moves the oysters into different growing conditions and locations and stuff. But we start our oysters, we get our seed at 2 millimeter, run the whole nursery kind of system using CPAS seed baskets, kind of get a good shape. Then we move them out into ground cages, and then we finish them in our hexel baskets, adjustable long lines again. So it's the adjustable long line system just produces a better oyster. But there's also a benefit of having some ground cages, in my opinion, because it kind of it allows you to kind of move more product without necessarily having to have the infrastructure of a massive long line farm. But that's kind of our setup. And yeah, I think when our oysters are good, I taste cream of mushroom soup. So that's what I taste. But yeah, Simon has said, what did he said, lobster bisque or another creamy soup, maybe like a clam chowder or something. So kind of like a buttery, creamy, pretty salty experience. Yeah.
Nice, man. Nice. I always get a kick out of have you listened to my latest episode with Sue Wicks?
No, I haven't. I need to check it out.
Yeah, so she goes into describing her oyster, and she's like, I'm not how does she say, a professional at, getting notes,
Yeah, exactly.
tasting notes like you guys are. And then she starts like, talking about her flavor profile. I'm like, Sue, I just stopped her in the middle. I was like, Sue, hold up. Wait a minute. She's breaking it all the way down.
Yeah.
I'm like, Sue, come on now. You got it.
Yeah, and sometimes I feel like it's only that experience like of eating an oyster a lot of times that you're like, oh, that's what it tastes like. And that's almost like easier to connect with than being like, oh, the salinity is like 4 out of 5 and whatever, it's like, but to be able to be like, this reminds me of that, it's
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. When we were at DC on the hash show,
yeah.
I kind of felt like you had your stuff together pretty much. Like when talking to I forget her name now.
Elaine Luria. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like how do you stay up to date with like the laws and legislations and all of that good stuff? Like, are you on top of all of that stuff?
I think so what we were talking about that day, it was the topic of SAV and aquaculture, and it's still a relevant thing. And for me, I stay on top of it, or I'm interested in it at least because it's all around us. Our farm and our area is covered in SAV, and the surrounding area also has a lot of SAV. So in terms of getting anything permitted, um, it's very applicable to whether or not you can do certain activities in certain areas.
Mhm.
So that's why I've kind of stayed on top of it, because I have to be.
Got you.
Yeah.
I definitely I've been wanting to get you on a podcast since forever.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we finally got it going. Let me look
Yeah.
at
I
the
hope I
camera.
didn't
I
step.
guess that helps. But no, I'm glad you're doing good, man. And whenever you need a positive word, hit me up. You got my number, man.
Yeah.
Um,
I
you know,
appreciate it. It was fun to chat for a second. I hope I didn't stumble over my words too bad.
no, you're good, man. You're good. I guess we'll end this. Where can the folks find you and find your oysters?
Yeah, so I think I'm most active on Instagram. So you can just find us at Lambert Shellfish. That's kind of where I'm doing, daily posts and stories and stuff. Our website, lambertshellfish.co. And then we sell to a few local restaurants, but mostly wholesale. So we go up to New York, mostly around here in this Virginia Beach area, and down to Georgia and stuff right now. So yeah, if folks are interested in kind of getting a sample of our stuff, or talking more, they can shoot me an email at lambertshellfish@gmail.com, and then happy to talk more.
Cool. Appreciate you, brother. Congrats on the baby. And it's gonna be a ride. It's
It already has been.
definitely
Yeah, there's no getting off this ride.
right. Oh man. All right, man. Thanks. Okay.
Have a good one. See you.